couple of things, 3 key concepts. Now, this is a modified version of what, maybe about 10 years ago in the field of kind of usability. The 3 circles were a little bit different. It was instead of the audience, it was the user. And then instead of the touch point, it was a system, right? Whatever system it was that you were designing. And then instead of context, it was environment. So I think that those 3 concepts still exist today, but for it to be relevant to what you guys do, think about it with a new spin. So it's not about the user, it really is about understanding your target audience, whoever that target audience might be. It's not about the system, because system almost seems to suggest out of the gate that you're building something big and clunky. It may not be, right? The touch point could well be a phone conversation with someone who is manning the customer service line. The touch point could also be an app that someone has just downloaded. And then context. Now, context, I think, is what makes the difference between a good designer and a great designer. Whenever you understand the context of the user, you're able to empathize with, whatever they're struggling with, or what it would take to kind of nudge things in a more positive way for them to buy more or return less or come back again. But you would have the power and you would have the knowledge of what makes that particular consumer tick in that particular context. Okay? So we'll delve into each of these circles more. So just to kind of recap, so audience, who is your consumer? Is it a prospect? Is it someone who maybe is using a competitor's product and doesn't know about you? Or is this someone who already uses your product and you're trying to engage them in different ways? Maybe you want them to consider more products that you're offering. Now, what are their needs and objectives? That's very obvious. Next one is for the touch point. So again, the word journey comes into play. Now, the second point that's interesting, what are the strengths of each channel? Now, that's interesting because if you think about the channels that are at your disposal, think about an iPhone or a smartphone. Now, there's something unique about that channel because it has photo capability, which you wouldn't have under normal circumstances. So think about how, in the case of that particular product, would the photo capability give you an edge? So for those of you who have the Nike ID app, you can take a photo of anything and then it will filter shoes that match that color scheme. So that's an example of, don't just put all your eggs in all the baskets, but be very careful about thinking about kind of what's unique about a channel and how you should be leveraging that channel in a unique way. The last one, context, and I mentioned it just now. So are there any challenges trying to engage with the consumer? So, we're making the assumption that if we have something to tell an audience that they will listen, but there are times when the consumer may be distracted or the experience that you're building for them requires too much investment of time. So you need to know what circumstances are they in. So if the thing that you're building is for use in a moving bus, for example, you can't have the product be held with 2 hands because you might be holding on to a railing in the bus or in a subway. So that's an example of kind of being very hyper aware of what makes the user's environment unique. What are the consumer's priorities? So they may want to do 10 things. But a lot of times, good example, in financial services, whenever customers come and they want to figure out which mortgage is the right one for them, you could try to tell them about the difference between a fixed rate or an adjustable rate, but sometimes all they want to know is, I want to pay it off fast. What's the right product for me? Or I want the flexibility to be able to switch my rate after a few years because I'm not making so much now. I want to start out with a lower rate. I want to change it. So these are examples of being able to kind of get at the priority of what the consumer is trying to get at. Okay, and then of course the last one is in some ways you're kind of trying to predict what the consumer is doing. So always think about the next step. So if someone buys something and they're done, is that enough? from a consumer standpoint, you want to keep engaging with the consumer. So why don't you ask them something about their last purchase? Maybe ask them how they found their last purchase. Were they happy with the last product? But keep that conversation going. So it's not enough to just end the experience where you think you've got them to buy something or they've listened to you, but how do you bring that relationship further?